Good morning, grade 10s. This week we're going to do the parabola. That's a new function. Up to now we did the straight line y equals mx plus c. But let's have a look at the new function, which we say it's the parabola or quadratic function. And the equation, the general form will be y equals ax squared. So once there's a square, we call that a parabola. Let's have a look at the shape. If it's given to you f of x is x squared, so f of x means the y, and that means the a value, the coefficient there, will be a 1. So once it's like that, we call that the mother graph. Now let's have a look. If we take your fx notation there, and we say now, let's complete the table. So that means then that your x value will be -3. What must I do? You take your equation, which is then f of x equals then x squared. Now the x value, it's -3. That's why we've practiced the fx notation. In brackets you substitute that value. That 3 goes into there. And what must you do? You must multiply it by itself, and it's giving you a 9. So that means the coordinate there, that point, x is equal to -3 and the y is equal to 9. So that's your x value and that's your y value. Now you substitute that into your table. What is the next x value? It's -2. So what will you do? You replace the -2 into your fx there. So once again, your fx, that means your y value, your equation of your square is then x squared. Now we're going to calculate f minus 2. So what must I do with the -2? I substitute it into the place of x, and once you substitute it, you substitute in brackets. -2 times -2 is then a 4. So therefore your coordinates will be -2 for x, and the y coordinate is 4. So now you write there underneath the -2, you write a 4. What is your next x value? Remember, the x values are called the independent variable, and the y values, the fx, is the dependent one. So now I take my -1. So now I say, okay, my fx, it's still x squared. So now I say f minus 1 equals that -1 substitute in x, so it's -1 squared, and -1 times a -1 is a +1. It makes then coordinate of x is -1, that's given, and you've calculated the y, which is 1. Now you just substitute it in there. If I substitute the 0 into my x, what is 0 times 0? Will be 0. If I substitute the 1 into my x, 1 times 1 is then still a 1. If I substitute a 2 there, 2 times 2, it's a 4. If I substitute a 3 in there, it's 3 times 3, that's giving you a 9. So that is your table. To complete your table, you can just do substitution, and that's why we've practiced the fx notation. Fx is then the y value. Or you can use your calculator once again. You can put that onto mode, and then you see this table. Then you press that number. Fx means then the y. So if I say now fx, it will be x squared. So I say alpha and then the x, and then you say your x squared. So that's my equation. If I say now to you, right, so let's put equal. That's another graph. We're only going to draw one graph. Then I just put equal again. Where must I start? If you look at your table, you've started at -3 equals. And where must I end? End at the positive 3 according to the table. And the step means in what do you count? You're counting in ones. So you put equal. So there's the table. Can you see the x is -3? F of x is the y. That was a 9. If you look there, it's a 9. If you go to the next one there, you'll see my x is -2, my y is 4. If you look at that values, it will be the same. So you can just check that. So now you've got your calculators there, the values. Now what must I do now? Now I must go to the Cartesian plane. That's the y and the x axis. So the vertical is the y, horizontal is the x. Now the first one we've calculated, x is -3, and then I must go to 9. Where they intersect there, you can also use a ruler there. You can put your ruler there for x, and then you just go up here at 9. You go across and you make your dot there. The next one is -2. You can put it over there. It's -2. Your y value you've calculated was 4, and where they intersect, you just put a little dot there. Then you take -1. -1 was then a 1. Remember that's a 2 there, so that will be a 1 there. Your 0 will be 0. You just make your dots. The 1 will be 1 again. The 2 will go up to 4. You just dot it down, and the 3 goes up to 9. But now you've got the dots. Now it looks like it's not a straight line. Can you see it's more like a curvy form there? So parabola, if you want to see exactly what is the shape, I'm going to put in the calculator just to show you the shape. I'm going to use this -1 to the 0 there on the calculator. So what I'm going to do there is the following. Okay, so I'm still on the fx notation there. I'm going to still put my equation in. That's x squared. Sorry, that's alpha and then x, and it must be squared. Now I'm going to start with -1, right? I'm going to end with +1. But now I'm not going to count in ones. I'm going to count in, let's say, 0,125. Okay, 1/8. So my step is 0,125. So it's very small units I'm going to use. So if you look at that on the calculator, you see -1 is still 1, but look at that answer. Can you see? So it's going slightly down. Slightly, and it forms, those dots are so small, so close to each other, it forms like a little buckets. Can you see that? So it's not a straight line. So if you put more smaller intervals there, you'll see the shape. It's like it's a curve. So it's not a straight line. Right. But you don't have to do that all the time. It's just to show you now the shape. So then you start from the 1. Now you can see it's a curve. Please don't use a ruler for this. You use your free hand. And you now get the shape there. And this is the shape of the parabola. Just make it a little bit longer, and you put your arrows, because I only use certain values there. And this is the shape of the parabola. What was y equals mx plus c? It's a straight line, and this is then the shape of the parabola. So that we call then the mother graph. So now you can do the rest, and we will discuss that then later on.